Hello, my name is Sofia Martinez. I'm 42 years old. Death wasn't supposed to find me in that ICU bed in Miami. I was the physical therapist, the one who helped others reclaim their strength, not the one fighting for every breath. But my lungs failed, and in those moments between life and death, I found myself face to face with Jesus. What he revealed to me about the isolation, about the deeper spiritual wounds that the pandemic inflicted on souls like mine, changed everything I thought I knew about suffering and purpose. This isn't just my near-death experience. It's a message I was sent back to share. On March 22, 2021, I died in the respiratory unit of Jackson Memorial Hospital where I'd worked for 14 years. It still feels surreal to say those words. I was the one who helped COVID survivors rebuild their strength, who guided them through the long journey back to breathing normally, walking steadily, living fully. Miami was hit hard during the Delta variant surge. Our rehabilitation center was overflowing with patients who had survived the worst of the virus, but were left with bodies that felt foreign to them. I lived in a small condo in Coral Gables with my rescue dog, Luna. My parents had passed away 3 years apart. First my father from cancer, then my mother from a broken heart, as she used to say. My sister Carmen lived in Spain with her family. We video called every few weeks, but the time difference and our busy lives kept us distant. I had been engaged once, to Miguel, but he left when my mother got sick. He said he couldn't handle the stress, the constant hospital visits, the way I became consumed with caregiving. During the pandemic, I worked longer hours than ever. Patients needed more than just physical rehabilitation. They needed hope. Many had been isolated for weeks, separated from families, traumatized by the experience of nearly dying alone. I threw myself into helping them, but somewhere along the way, I lost myself. I used to pray the rosary every night like my grandmother taught me, but after watching so many people suffer, after seeing families torn apart by loss and politics, after witnessing the cruelty that emerged during those dark months, I stopped. God felt absent. Prayer felt like talking to empty air. I traded my faith for medical journals, my prayers for treatment protocols. Maybe you understand what it's like to pour yourself out for others until there's nothing left. To smile and encourage all day, then come home to silence that feels like a weight on your chest. To lose yourself in helping others heal, while your own soul slowly dies. I remember one evening in particular. I had just finished working with Carlos, a 35-year-old father who had been on a ventilator for 2 months. He was relearning how to walk, how to hold a cup, how to hug his children without losing his breath. As I watched him struggle to take 10 steps, I felt something crack inside me. Not sympathy, I was beyond that. Just emptiness. I went to my car and sat in the hospital parking lot for an hour, staring at nothing. The cough started around Valentine's Day. I ignored it, thinking it was just exhaustion. But the fever came fast, and the breathlessness got worse. One morning I woke up on my bathroom floor with Luna pawing at me, whimpering. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, found me when I didn't answer her calls about watching Luna for the weekend. I remember being wheeled into the same unit where I had spent countless hours with patients. The nurses who admitted me were people I worked with daily. They tried to joke, to keep things light, but I could see the fear in their eyes. I was young, healthy, vaccinated. If it could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. The progression was swift. Within 48 hours, I was on high-flow oxygen. Within a week, intubated. They put me in a medically induced coma to give my lungs a chance to heal. But somewhere in that darkness, I could still sense what was happening around me. I could hear the voices, the alarms, the prayers whispered by colleagues who had become family. Then one night, everything changed. My oxygen levels crashed. My heart stopped. The monitors went flat. Later, I learned that the team worked on me for 8 minutes before they got a rhythm back. But during those 8 minutes, I was somewhere else entirely. The transition wasn't dramatic. One moment I was struggling to breathe, feeling like I was drowning in my own body, and the next I was free. The sensation was like finally exhaling after holding your breath for hours. The pressure, the pain, the desperate fight for air, all of it simply stopped. I found myself floating above the scene, watching the code team work on my body. Dr. Patel, who had become a friend over the years, was doing compressions. Maria, one of the nurses I'd shared countless lunch breaks with, was crying as she pushed medications. I wanted to tell them I was okay, that the struggle was over, but I couldn't reach them. Then I began to move, drawn by something I couldn't see but felt with every fiber of my being. The hospital room faded, then the building, then the city lights of Miami. I was ascending through layers of what looked like golden mist, each one warmer and more welcoming than the last. The silence was profound, not empty, but full, like being wrapped in the most beautiful music you've ever heard, but without sound. And in that silence, I felt a presence approaching. Before I saw him, I knew who it was. My spirit recognized him the way a child recognizes their parent's voice in a crowded room. Jesus appeared not in blinding light, but in gentle radiance that seemed to emanate from within him. He looked different from the pale European images I'd grown up with. His skin was olive-toned, his hair dark and wavy, his hands strong like someone who had worked with them. But his eyes, they held eternity. And when he looked at me, I felt completely known and completely loved. "Sophia," he said, and my name in his voice was like coming home after being lost for years. I collapsed to my knees, or whatever passed for knees in that place. Years of suppressed grief poured out of me. "Jesus, I'm sorry. I stopped believing. I stopped praying. I lost faith in you." He knelt beside me and placed his hand on my shoulder. The touch was real, warm, more solid than anything I'd ever felt. "You never lost me, Mihija. You lost sight of me in the darkness, but I never left your side. But I was so angry," I sobbed. "I watched good people suffer. I saw families destroyed. I stopped seeing your love in any of it." "I know," he said softly. "I felt every moment of your pain. I wept with every patient you lost. I was there in every act of compassion you showed, even when you couldn't feel me." He helped me to my feet, and suddenly we were walking together through what felt like the most beautiful garden, though it was unlike any earthly place. Colors existed there that I had no names for, and every breath filled me with peace that seemed to heal wounds I didn't even know I carried. "You want to understand the suffering," he said as we walked. "You want to know why I allowed so much pain." I nodded, afraid to speak. "Look," he said, gesturing ahead of us. The scene opened like a vision within a vision. I saw the pandemic not just as a medical crisis, but as a spiritual moment. I watched families forced to slow down, to really look at each other for the first time in years. I saw healthcare workers like myself push beyond their limits, but also discovering strength they never knew they had. I saw communities coming together, strangers helping strangers, people choosing love over fear. "Every crisis reveals what is already in the heart," Jesus explained. "Some chose selfishness, but many chose sacrifice. Some chose hate, but many chose healing. You were one of my instruments of healing, Sophia. Even when you couldn't feel my presence, you were my hands and feet." Then he showed me something that broke my heart open. I saw myself working with patients, but now I could see the spiritual dimension. With every exercise I guided them through, light was flowing through my hands. With every word of encouragement I spoke, I was actually speaking life into their spirits. When I helped Carlos take those first steps, I was helping him reclaim not just his physical strength, but his will to live. "You thought you were just a physical therapist," Jesus said, "but you were ministering to souls. Every person you helped heal was a prayer answered, even when you didn't realize you were praying." I wept again, but these were tears of wonder, not grief. I felt so empty, so alone, because you were trying to carry the weight of others' suffering by yourself. But that burden was never yours to bear alone. It was meant to drive you to me, to draw you into partnership with my healing love. He showed me more. Scenes of healthcare workers around the world, burning out, losing faith, feeling abandoned by God. But then I saw the truth. Jesus was there in every ICU, every emergency room, every rehabilitation center. He was present in the compassion that never died, in the determination to keep fighting for life, in the tears shed over strangers who became precious. The enemy wanted to use this pandemic to steal faith, to convince my people that suffering means I am absent, Jesus said. But suffering often reveals where I am most present, in the places where love refuses to give up. We walked further, and he showed me something else that made my spirit leap. I saw people all over the world being drawn back to prayer, to faith, to each other. I saw the pandemic stripping away distractions and forcing people to confront the deepest questions of life. Many were coming to him for the first time, or returning after years of wandering. This was never just about a virus. he said. It was about awakening souls who had fallen asleep, about reminding the world that they need more than medicine and technology. They need hope. They need love. They need me. Then he turned to me with an expression of both sadness and anticipation. That's why you have to go back. My heart sank. Go back? But I'm home here. I'm at peace. I don't want to leave you again. I know, mi amor. But your work isn't finished. There are people who need to see that healing is more than physical recovery. They need to see that I am still at work, still answering prayers, still bringing life from death. He showed me flashes of my future. Patients I hadn't met yet, healthcare workers who would need encouragement, family members who would need hope. I saw myself not just as a therapist, but as a bridge between the medical and the spiritual, helping people understand that God works through medicine, not despite it. But what if I fail again? I asked. What if I lose faith when things get hard? Jesus smiled, and it was like sunrise breaking over the ocean. Faith isn't about never doubting, Sophia. Faith is about choosing to trust me even in the doubts, about continuing to love even when you can't understand. You'll struggle again, but now you know I'm there in the struggle. He placed his hands on my face, and I felt such overwhelming love that I thought I might dissolve from the intensity of it. Tell them, he said. Tell them that I was never absent. Tell them that every prayer whispered in a hospital room reaches my ears. Tell them that healing comes in many forms, and sometimes the greatest healing happens in the heart, not the body. I felt myself beginning to fade from that place, being drawn back toward the world I'd left behind. Jesus, will I see you again? Every day, he said. In every patient you help heal, in every family you comfort, in every moment you choose hope over despair. I'll be there. The light began to dim, and I felt the crushing weight of returning to a physical body. But even as I descended back toward Earth, I carried with me an unshakable knowing. Death is not the end. Love is the ultimate reality, and no one who seeks healing is ever truly alone. I woke up to the sound of machines and the feeling of a breathing tube down my throat. The transition back to physical existence was jarring, like trying to squeeze into clothes that were 3 sizes too small. But underneath the discomfort was something new, an absolute certainty that I had been somewhere real, somewhere more real than the hospital room I was returning to. Recovery was slow and challenging. I had to relearn things my body had forgotten during the weeks in a coma. But this time, I wasn't just helping patients heal, I was healing alongside them, understanding their journey from the inside. The first thing I did when I could speak clearly was call Carmen in Spain. When I told her about my experience, she cried. Sophia, I've been praying for you every day. I felt like God was telling me you were going to be okay, but more than okay, that you were going to be different. She was right. Everything was different. I started each day with prayer, not from duty, but from hunger. I found myself talking to Jesus throughout my workdays, asking for wisdom with each patient, thanking him for small victories, seeking his comfort in moments of loss. My approach to therapy changed completely. I still used all my medical training, but now I also paid attention to the spiritual dimension of healing. I listened more deeply to patients' fears and hopes. I prayed silently as I worked with them. I spoke words of encouragement that came from a deeper place than professional training. One patient, Elena, had been struggling with depression after surviving COVID. She told me she felt like God had abandoned her during her illness. I shared my story and watched as hope rekindled in her eyes. You really think Jesus was there when I couldn't breathe? She asked. I know he was, I replied. He was breathing for you. I also reconnected with my faith community. I joined a prayer group at my church that specifically prayed for healthcare workers and patients. I started volunteering with a ministry that visited hospital patients who had no family nearby. Every act of service felt like worship. The most profound change was in how I viewed suffering. I stopped seeing it as evidence of God's absence and started seeing it as an opportunity for his presence to be revealed. Not that God causes suffering, but that he enters into it with us, transforms it, uses it to draw us closer to himself and to each other. 6 months after my experience, Dr. Patel asked me to speak at a conference for healthcare workers dealing with burnout and trauma. I was terrified, but I knew it was part of why I had been sent back. I shared my story, and afterward, a young nurse approached me with tears in her eyes. I was ready to quit, she said. I thought I couldn't take any more loss, any more pain. But hearing you speak, I think I can keep going. I think maybe God really is in this work with us. That's when I understood fully why Jesus had sent me back. Not just to heal bodies, but to help heal the faith that had been wounded by witnessing so much suffering. I still have difficult days. I still grieve the patience we lose. I still struggle with questions that don't have easy answers. But now I know that struggling with questions is different from struggling alone. Jesus is in the questions, in the doubts, in the darkest moments of loss and confusion. If you're reading this and you work in healthcare, or if you've lost someone during the pandemic, or if you've watched suffering and wondered where God is, I want you to know, He was never absent. He was there in every compassionate act, every prayer, every tear shed for a stranger. He was there in the science that developed vaccines, in the hands that provided care, in the hearts that refused to stop hoping. My name is Sofia Martinez. I'm 42 years old. I was a skeptic who lost her faith in the darkness of a global pandemic. I died, I met Jesus, and I came back to tell you, you are not alone in your suffering. He is there in the ICU rooms, in the rehabilitation centers, in the quiet moments when you whisper prayers you're not even sure you believe. He hears them all. He answers them all, sometimes in ways we can see, sometimes in ways we won't understand until we meet Him face to face. But we will meet Him. And when we do, we'll discover that love was always the answer, healing was always possible, and hope was always justified, even when, especially when, we couldn't see it.